I know.
What did it take to get your play noticed? The first thing I want to know is, I know most writers want to write for Broadway. That's where the money is, you think. Broadway refers to the theatrical performances presented in 41 professional theaters, each with 400 or more seats, 500. Located in New York, of course. Usually only 30 to 35 of these theaters are operating at any given time. What are your chances of being a successful Broadway writer? About the same as your odds of being picked tomorrow for the NFL. Less than 1%. What are your chances of having a success as being a writer anywhere? Much, much higher, but depends on your determination and drive. And that's what we're going to talk about now. And also depends on what you consider success. I learned this in television the hard way. I had the biggest agents in Los Angeles, William Morris, Eisenbach Green, creative artists, but never learned how to play the game. I waited for them to do things, and I made my living on options, scripts, and treatments, but few ever got produced, and those that did were so bad I took my names off them. You see, there's a difference between what you write on TV and what gets produced after the showrunners, directors, stars, craft service providers, and interns finish rewriting it. The only way the show on TV ends up good is if the writer ends up as being the showrunner, the director, and probably his own craft services. I finally left the industry for sanity, and only upon retirement did I start writing for the theater again. But this time I was determined to find out what the business was all about and find out how to succeed or at least fail, knowing I had done everything. Now, I know all of you consider yourselves to be amazing writers, so I'm not going to teach you how to write, but there are several caveats that I need to stress. First of all, a play needs to be a play, not a monologue, not discussions of past events. Plays need action, either physically or verbally. People in the real world have individual personalities. Your mother and your father and your neighbors next door are three different people. The same is true for plays. You'd be amazed at how many plays all the characters have the same distinct personality and personality quirks. Make sure you don't let all your characters speak with the same voice yours. There has to be conflict, whether a physical adversary or a social or time challenge. Plus, your audience has to have someone to root for, or a group of people, a family perhaps. You have to like somebody. Now that we've covered these basics and we have our play so perfect that we can't believe we even wrote it, then we face the real challenges on how to get them promoted. I have to promote my plays just like you do, and I've tried several methods, so I'm going to go through what they are and how successful they were. First, I joined a writers group, Fierce Backbone, because I get to hear my work read. That's worth 10 times the membership cost. Writers have to let go of their work momentarily to get other people's reaction. Not a mother's, not a daddy's, not a boyfriend or a husband's, but other writers, other artists who have no vested interest other than wishing you well. Yay, Fierce. I also joined ALAP, the Alliance of Los Angeles Playwrights, and it proved its worth the first party I went to. There I met Peter Colley. And I asked Peter, he's successful, a Canadian writer who's very, very successful. I asked him how he ended up so successful. Instead of answering, he asked me one question. What do you do when you finish writing a play? And I proudly said, I send it out and I start reading another. And he said, wrong. You cannot write another play until you have that first play being produced. Writing is a business, and you need to spend at least 80% of your time learning how or where to promote your next work, your work. Well, that was a kick in the face, but I agreed to the system, to a system. So I sent out 25 scripts to fit 25 theaters that said they would accept unsolicited scripts. And there are various websites you can belong to that will tell you what deadlines are coming up, which theaters will accept. And so find those places. And I sent out the 25 scripts, nothing. With the other 80%, he mentioned that time that I was supposed to be spending on promoting my stuff, I was totally fucked. So I slipped back into my old computer and I started writing another script. There's comfort in creating and there's pain in promoting. Nothing happened for a year, and then all of a sudden, if you call a year later, all of a sudden, I got a letter from the Detroit Repertory Theater, an equity company with a 50-year history of producing. They wanted to do my play. Hooray! But a year later, I wasn't sure which version of my play I had sent them. And I didn't dare ask. I was always rewriting my stuff. You found that out. Then fortunately, they asked if I'd made any changes and I was saved. But afraid they wouldn't like the rewrites, but they did. And that led to a 6-week run of Finding the Burnout Heart, my first play. They played to full houses. Wasn't anything like I expected. It played to full houses to an entirely Black audience who treated going to the theater like a major social event. Everyone dressed to the nines and cocktail and food were served. And if they didn't like the characters, they let that character know. I mean, vocally. And why this theater was brave enough to pick this play, I'll never know, because the subject matter was hot spot in this community. The audience started out laughing, then angrily protesting, and then choosing sides, then changing sides and cheering, and ended up, the play was voted the best play of the theater season, for which I got an award. And everyone, the cast, got awards. In spite of its success, the subject, coming out as gay, was too daring for most publishers. And community theater at that point, no, because it was too daring for most white theaters. But I did get 2 6-week runs at the Missing Piece Theater in Burbank and the Lillian here in Hollywood. Then everything dried up. So I had to try something else. I had sent dozens of emails out to theaters to try to get them to read my second play, Exit Laughing. And I had worked on that in Fierce Backbone. I got 0 results. So I created a fake writers agency, NRI Creatives, and I wrote to the same 10 theater companies on IIC stationery from a fictional literary agent of that company, Keats Lee, touting this new writer she knew they would love. And she got 8 out of 10 responses back, saying they would love to read the script, or they couldn't because they were already committed for the next 2 years. I even created a website for IIC before I chickened out and closed it. But I did learn something very important that has been confirmed over and over again in my research. Unless you have an amazing track record, most publishers and most theater want to know someone else has paid money to produce your play. Or at least that someone else recommends your work. And the production you do, they don't really want it to be a vanity production where you're producing your own stuff. They want someone else unrelated to you, not mother, not brother, not father, not sister, to have produced it. Now they won't know if you have different names. Keats, my daughter, who deals in marketing, suggested that I could be marketing my scripts completely in the wrong way. Why not go straight to the theater's artistic directors and find out how they actually chose the scripts for their seasons? Duh. Nothing like a daughter's 2x4 to the side of the head to get my attention. Now, I belong to AACT, and if any one of you here don't, you're crazy. And for joining it, I had the list of literally hundreds upon hundreds of producing community theaters in the world and the name of their artistic directors. Plus, since I now knew personally many artistic directors, I called them to ask how they picked their seasons. These are the questions I asked. How do you select scripts for a new season? And how far in advance do you select your season? If I want to get an artistic director or community committee, theater committee to look at a script, what is the best approach to get their interest? What attracts your attention to a particular play? Do you read email advertisements or submissions? Do you prefer mail flyers or brochures? Do you basically go by word of mouth for people you respect? Does advertising capture your attention? If so, which magazines? AACT, Dramatist, Theater World? Is there a publication or publications you turn to see what other theaters are doing? Is there anywhere you can find out how successful a play has been elsewhere? Or do you call ADs and just ask? Is there a good old buddy network of ADs, male and female, where friends tell friends what worked for them in plays they think are great for the season? Do show directors influence your decisions by expressing interest in directing a script? How many people have to weigh in on a script, a play reading committee, before you decide to do it? Who has the final say? What most influences those readers? Comedy, community standards, religious beliefs, lack of controversy? Do you try to choose one play each season to stretch your community's understanding of society within or outside of your committee? In other words, a play that deals with issues within your community but not addressed. Do audience members influence your decisions by mentioning plays they've seen and loved? And here's some of what I learned from their answers. Most theaters will not produce a play that's not been produced before. They want proof that someone other than the writer put up money to see the play produced. If it's an original, unproduced, unpublished play, it has to come recommended by a producer or director they respect. But even that's a long shot. Almost all admitted that plays sent in by unknown authors end up in the trash. The same goes for most pamphlets, flyers, and hype advertisements. The key word is not trash, but unknown. If an artistic director or producers have met you and liked you somewhere else, and if you've been recommended by someone they respect, then you are not unknown. And as long as you put all these pieces together in their mind before you call them, they will usually have your play read. You have to understand that most theaters receive close to 80 submissions a week from publishers, writers, and writer-actors. Remember, all those publishers out there are pushing their plays, trying to get them done. So how do you get past this hurdle? First, don't be unknown. Join ACT. It costs money, doesn't cost money to join, but go to their conventions, go to their things. When they have an event, sign up. It costs $1,000. It's not cheap, but go. Anything you can do. ALAP, that doesn't cost much. Go to ALAP. Go and meet people. Also, every time ALAP has a director forum or something where you can talk to people from different theaters, go to it. Research every theater you're presenting to, and that's the big thing. If you decide, if you say join ALAP or AACTC, and you've got a couple of plays in theaters in towns you think you'd like, because you like the size of them, etc., look them up on the internet. Research every play, every theater you're presenting to. What kind of plays do they produce in the past 5 years? How did those plays do? Look for reviews. How would your play fit into their lineup? What is it similar to? What would it appeal to? Who would it appeal to? Second, understand the system. While the artistic director may have the final vote on a play, most theater companies have a play reading committee of 8 to 10 members. More than half of those made up of older members of their theater audience, 40 to 60, with a couple of 20 to 40-year-olds thrown in for spice. Diversity is desired, but usually only in ages, not races. Most theaters tend to be either black or white, not equally mixed. Now, the larger ones and the more ones that have the best budgets, they might have more diversity, but not a whole lot. Most of the committees are usually women, with only a couple of men included. They read and discuss the plays that are submitted to them. They are all very familiar with and are the audience of the plays to be presented. If a play is too racy, or too forward-thinking, or too anti-religious, or too religious, or calls for too many young actors, then they will probably reject it because, one, they like to play the roles, and they're older. Yet, if they have a growing children's theater or teen program, that might be a plus. This is where research on your part is important. You need to link the dots to sell your play. That doesn't mean limit your creativity to mundane subjects, but it does mean choose your theaters based on how cutting edge they are. There are a lot of smaller theaters out there that love topics that deal with race, gender, and relationships. But the time of a tree, a bloom, it blooms, it dies, woo, woo, it's gone. That was the 70s. And literally there were a lot of plays like that, and the absurdist plays that were put out don't play in community theater. Professional theater will pull them out, Crap Slash Tape and places like that. But if you write that type of play, it's not going to sell unless you are really established. On the other side of the coin, if a play has been successful in some other theater, they'll almost always consider it. So your first thing is to get your play done in some theater and promote it from them. I've heard several times, I love this play, but I'm not sure my audience is ready for it yet. Everything comes down to, like everything else, how many tickets can they sell? So this is the important question. Ask yourself, who am I writing for? Who's going to pay money to see my play? If you don't care, then go into the closet and jerk off by yourself. Don't waste anyone's time. Almost all plays are vetted before final choosing by calling other theaters, other directors who have previously presented the play to determine audience reaction and financial success. There are 4 or 5 major large community theaters with yearly budgets of between $5 and $11 million. All smaller theaters look to them for guidance. For me as a writer, I want to market to these theaters. But how do I make inroads into them? First, get to know these theaters online. First, find out which ones they are. I know one of them, and I focused primarily on that theater for a year and finally got them to produce one of my plays, but COVID knocked my play off the schedule I was talking about. But I do have a relationship now. I know what kind of shows they put on. I know who their artistic team is. I've looked into each of their backgrounds to see if I can find any connection. 6 degrees of separation. I always ask, who do I know that knows someone on that team? Find out when the next AACT Managing Directors Conference is. Now, I didn't even know they had a Managing Directors Conference at AACT, but they do. Once you find out when that is, try to find someone who is going to that conference. It's only for artistic directors. This is the time most of the bigger artistic directors meet with each other to discuss their success stories and their failures. And they do meet for that purpose. Find out who you know that is going for that event and see if they can mention the success they had presenting your play. Or at least if they've heard of a great new play and they're looking forward to reading it. A good recommendation at that meeting or mention, and there will be dozens of requests for your script. Always be ready to send them out a script. No delay. The same day they ask for it, send that sucker out. You're always amenable, even if it's published. Because if you wait for the publishers will charge them, and then they delay, and it goes to a committee, and it finally gets out. I don't give a shit. I'll send it out. If an actor calls and says, I really have heard this is a fun play to do, and they're talking about doing it, I'm going to audition for it. Can you send me a copy of the play? Send it to them. Because that's one more person out there talking about this great play. And I've gotten about 4 productions because an actor kept talking about how funny it was. All right, since time is short, here are the other things that are just as important. Your play has to have a good title. I cannot tell you how important that is. A title that attracts the director out of the 80 submissions received in a week. It must pique his or her interest and give them a clue as to the type of play it is. Exit Laughing, Cries in the Night, A 3-Story House, Sweet Tea and Other Secrets. Now, I did have original titles like TBD, which was a great title for a play. Duh, how dumb could I be? You can't put TBD on a lineup of shows. It means to be determined. You can't put it on a billboard. Here's our lineup of shows. So, TBD. Yeah, duh. So I, that time, just let the cast pick a title. It became Sweet Tea and Other Secrets, which worked. It says Southern comedy with secrets. It has to have a good tagline. 1 or 2 sentences that sum up the play and capture its experience. This is extremely hard to do. But a good tagline in theater, as in TV, can make or break a show. Because that's what, when the artistic director reads the play and he says, here to the committee, I want you to read this, and they say, what's it about? They don't want a lengthy discussion. 1 or 2 sentences that sum up the play and captures spirit. This is extremely hard to do, but a good tagline is amazing. ADs have to be able to quickly get their audience on board through advertising and ticket sales. So someone will say, oh, come on, honey, this should be good. It's about a 60-year-old kid who has to share his bedroom with his crotchety old granddad. Doesn't say a whole lot about coming out party or anything, part of this, but it sets up a thing so people will come in to see it. They think it's going to be a comedy, and it is a comedy. Also, it helps if it is a comedy now, especially now. Nobody is looking for the deep and philosophical piece of work right now. They are so afraid of losing their audience completely and never opening again that the theaters are clearing out their lineup and picking up only shows and bringing in standby shows, Neil Simon's, all the musicals. They'll throw musicals up the ass. Maybe by next year we can get some. I've had a couple of people call and say, smaller theaters, and say, we heard your play was really good. We want to do it and maybe open with it because our audience has already heard of it because someone else did it at a dinner theater. The play has to be comedy. It has to be easily accessible. So be willing to send out the copies, either physical or via internet, depending on the preference. Then after they finally agreed to read your script, I can't stress this enough. The first 5 pages had better be sensational. Those 5 pages have to capture the reader. If not, it'll be thrown away. If so, they'll read the next 5. If those 5 don't hold up, the play will be rejected. And always remember who is reading these pages first. 40 to 60-year-old, mostly women. If you don't make sure these elements are covered, you're wasting everybody's time. But they're not that hard to do. I wish I had more time, but I hope this has helped. This gives you at least a thing. Any questions?
Perfect.
Can't hear anybody? Yes.
Brittany.
Yeah, Brittany.
When you said tagline, is that the same thing as logline?
It's like a log line in TV.
It's like your elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch, it's that one in there.
Cool, thank you.
Okay.
Nancy.
I was just going to explain the difference between a tagline and a log line. A tagline is about 4 or 5 words in space. They can hear you scream, or they can't hear you scream. But the log line is like a whole sentence that encapsulates more of the arc of the piece. But you need both.
Okay, good. Well, then it should be a log line then, because you've got one sentence to do it. Also, I'd throw a tagline in too, because they want to have that button that they can pitch to do it. Okay. Yes, Jeffrey. Anybody?
No, I don't know. I don't know why it went to me. I was just.
Anyone else?
Fabulous.
Mona.
I can't hear you.
You're muted.
I'm muted.
Sorry. Is community theater, are these amateur actors who are getting together, or these are professional theaters that are operating for communities? What is the definition?
Okay, you have regional theaters, which are professional actors that perform for the community.
Okay.
You have professional theaters. Then you have the community theater, and community theater is volunteer. Everything's volunteer. Like in LA, we have quite a few very good volunteer theaters, but they mainly do musicals. And they draw the same people that the professional theaters do. So in community theaters in the boondocks, I used to think of community theater, oh, terrible, little hole in the wall things that don't, and there are still some of those. But I was shocked when I opened to Exit Laughing, and it was beautifully done. And then we were going to go to Broadway, try to open it on Broadway. And one of the first major concerns is we can't afford that set.
Mm-hmm.
The set I had would cost a fortune to get built and to get designed. And then they wanted to use the set design that this guy had done, which was just brilliant. But they couldn't because he wasn't in their union to take him to New York to do it. So that started discussions and it became, but you have good theaters and you have bad ones. I was shocked to find out that the theater I opened in, they did 480 seats. They did 12 performances, and they sold out at full price, every ticket, every show.
Wow.
Wow.
So it got a reputation for breaking all house records for a non-musical.
What was the name of that theater, Paul?
That was the Springfield, it was Springfield Little Theater in Springfield, Illinois, Kentucky. No, Springfield, Missouri.
Missouri, yeah.
And
Missouri.
really, really good theater there.
Oh,
But
I thought it was in Michigan. You talked about it.
Oh, well, I did that one at the Detroit Rep,
Oh,
which
Detroit.
was the Detroit Repertory Company. And that was an equity theater. My
Oh.
first was an equity theater. I've done
Wow.
a couple of equity theaters since then. But, and I made more money with the community theaters.
Oh.
Do they pay you a percentage of the house?
No, they pay you $100 a performance or something like that, a performance. So you just get a blanket thing, but every performance they do, you get the money. And that was the most expensive thing. Now, this latest play that I did, Something Dark, which became Cries in the Night, because it's easier to publicize, they're charging $300 a performance because the theater that wanted to do it was doing 500 seats. And they were complaining because it's now, my plays are expensive. So I had to call the publisher and see if we couldn't cut it down because with COVID, we don't want to charge. So now what they're charging, all the publishers are charging for the number of seats you sell.
Oh.
Oh.
So if you have to separate everyone 6 feet apart, that means every other row. That means every instead of a row of 48 across, you're going to have 15. And they're going to charge you. But it means that the play may have to, if they're going to have a subscription base of 1,000 people, they may have to run the play twice as long. So they want to try to negotiate a way that they only pay half amount for the smaller houses and half of the, and you end up at the same. So that's all being worked out. Anything else?
Thank you, Paul.
Thank
Yes.
you. Yeah, thank you for listening so well.
It was fabulous, Paul. Really fabulous.
Yeah,
I
this
wish
is also
some of the
being
other writers would
recorded.
stick around. Yeah.
This is also being recorded if anyone wants to go back and listen to any part of what you said
Oh,
again,
good.
just
Okay.
for anyone that didn't know that. But thank you so much, Paul, for all that information.
Mm.
Appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And you should either do a TED Talk or at least publish that on your page or something. I mean, the whole script that you read, because it's
Okay. It's a good idea. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
you could write your own blog, Paul.
Yeah, right.
Thank you so very much for that.
Yeah.
Bye, Nancy. Bye, Nancy.
Bye.
Bye,
everyone.
guys.
Bye, guys.